Okay, it is Tuesday, and we're going to do a Rashi from the third Aliyah. We're going to do two Rashis today, two short Rashis. We finally reached the encounter between Yosef and his brothers, and as we mentioned yesterday, the big reveal. Yosef finally gets up the courage or the strength or the right timing or prophetically understood that this was the right moment to reveal himself to his brothers and tell them who he truly was. He does that, and then, of course, goes into our Aliyah today, where he reassures them that they shouldn't be upset with themselves, that everything worked out fine, that all this was part of God's master plan, that he's not angry with them. And the first thing he asks is they should, of course, go and tell their father that he's alive so that they can become reunited again and that they could give comfort to his father after so many years of agony of not knowing what happened to Yosef. And he promises them the Yashafta be'eretz Goshen. He promises them a good life in the land of Egypt. He promises them food. V'chil kalti oscha. They're going to take care of you. He's going to give you sustenance, etc. And then some interesting psukim ensue, which I wanted to take a look at today. V'hine einechem ra'os ve'einei achi binyamin ki fi hamedaber alechem. He comes back to kind of proving his identity to them. But by proving his identity and reinforcing to them, you should know from my voice, this is me, this is truly me, this is Yosef. Right before even kind of giving them a chance to respond and to talk back, he says, this is me. He says, don't be worried. He says, this is God's plan. He says, go get my father. He says, this is me again. And then they start to interact after this point. The structure of the pasuk is kind of interesting. It says, V'hine einechem ra'os, your eyes see, ve'einei achi binyamin, and my eyes of my brother Binyamin, kipi hamedaber alechem. Now it's unclear that it's my voice that is speaking to you. So of course you have the divide here between sight and sound. We talked about this last week in another Rashi. Kind of interesting that it says your eyes see that it's my voice. It should be your ears hear that it's my voice, but it's your eyes see that it's my voice. I don't want to go into that now. But why does he mention Einei Achi Binyamin? Pasuk could have just said, Hinei Einechem Ra'os, skip these words, Kipi Amedaber Elechem. Your eyes see that it's my voice speaking to you, that it's really me. Why does he insert Ve'einei Achi Binyamin? The eyes of my brother Binyamin. So Rashi says here, what he did there was really equate all the brothers to Binyamin. Hishva es kulam yachad, lomar, in order to say. He equated them all as one to Binyamin. He compared all the eyes of the brothers to Binyamin in this pasuk to tell us something. Kashem shein belibi sina lahatil b'Binyamin achi shelo haya b'mechirasi kach ein belibi alechem. It was further proof to the brothers that he wasn't angry, that he wasn't harboring hatred or resentment towards them for what they did, by telling them, you all know that this is really me. And when he says that to them, he says, you and Binyamin all know this is really me. Why did he do that? To show that in his eyes, they were all equatable to Binyamin in status. What was unique about Binyamin? Not only was he Yosef's full brother, only full brother, but Binyamin never took part in the sale of Yosef. He never took part in the whole incident of throwing in a pit. So Yosef could not possibly have been angry at him or harbored any resentment to Binyamin. Binyamin was the shining example of the reconciled relationship with no hard feelings, no harsh feelings. And so now what he's saying to them is, you all know this is me. You, like Binyamin, all know this is me, as if to tell them, you should all feel comfortable that just as I have no anger towards Binyamin, I have no anger towards any of you either. So that's the comparison made in this pasuk. Then, two psukim later, we have this interesting encounter where Binyamin and Yosef actually embrace. They actually hug each other. Vayipol al tzavrei Binyamin achiv, vayef, u'Binyamin bacha al tzavarav. Yosef falls on Binyamin's necks, and he cries, and Binyamin cries on Yosef's neck. So there's a lot of interesting things going on in this pasuk. Of course, the beauty of the encounter of these two brothers once again. One has to wonder, number one, what they're crying about. Are these tears of joy? Are these tears of sadness? What tears are they shedding over here? And number two, Chazal notice that it says, Vayipol al tzavarei Binyamin achiv. Yosef falls on two shoulders of Binyamin, whereas when Binyamin falls on his, it says tzavarav. Maybe perhaps his one shoulder, his singular shoulder. So now Rashi comments on all of these things, and he says, "Vayipol tzavre Binyamin vayef al shnei mikdashot she'atidin lios bechalko shebinyamin v'sofa licharev." Why does Yosef fall on both Binyamin's shoulders too, and what is he crying about? So he's crying over the future destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, which will be in the territory of Binyamin, and he cries on both shoulders as if to foreshadow the fact that two temples would be destroyed in Binyamin's portion. And then, of course, Binyamin cries back on Yosef for a similar reason. Al Mishkan Shiloh Sha'atid Lios B'chalko Shel Yosef V'sofo Licharev. He's crying about the Mishkan of Shiloh, which would be placed in the territory of Yosef before the eventual building of the Beis Hamikdash. Mishkan Shiloh is also destroyed, and therefore there are three future destructions of God's house, which are all going to occur in the territory of Binyamin or Yosef. And so now in this moment, they cry on each other's shoulders tears of sadness for the future destruction that prophetically they see. Now, that explains the technicalities of what the tears are about, whether they're tears of joy or sadness. It explains the technicalities of why they're crying on two shoulders or one shoulder. But the broader question here is why in this moment of seeming joy, right? Finally they're encountering each other for the first time in so many years. There's the reunion here of all the brothers. It's a very happy moment. Why are they crying over something so sad in the future? And there's much Torah written about this question. There's much to say in terms of giving an answer. But what I wanted to suggest, this afternoon is a very limited answer, but one I think important for us to think about. So there's something cosmic happening in all of these scenes about the descent to Egypt and the encounter of the brothers, and we've sensed that in Rashi's all along. We especially highlighted that last week when we were talking about the negotiations, so to speak, between the brothers, Reuven, Yehuda, and Yaakov, about going down to Egypt, and how every step was kind of laced with meaning in between the lines about the future significance of these events. So I think everyone understood, both Binyamin and Yosef understood, that this was a moment not just of in this moment, but a moment that was going to reverberate throughout history. This is a moment, as I mentioned yesterday, where the transfer occurs in terms of kingship between Yosef and Yehuda. Yehuda becomes the progenitor of Malchus in this moment. It becomes the moment at which Yaakov comes down to Egypt, or is convinced to come down to Egypt, which is the beginning of the exile that is going to occur, and the suffering of their descendants, and then the eventual redemption and the eventual giving of the Torah. The whole process of Jewish history is set in motion at this time. So when Rashi or Chazal tell us that they were crying about some future event, what he's really telling us is they all sensed in this moment that there was some future being written over here. There was some cosmic significance to this moment. There was some chain reaction that was being set into motion, a domino effect that would continue to reverberate throughout Jewish history. They felt the grandeur of that moment, and so they cried. They cried over future things that would happen. Now, why, you would ask me, if that's really the answer, did they only cry tears of sadness and not tears of joy? There are many answers to that question. I'll leave that for you to think about the rest of today. Why is it only tears of sadness that are shed? Cosmic significance of this moment would also bring about good things in the future. Why they only focus on the sadness is a question that I'll leave you to think about. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care, everyone.
Thank you very much. That's very
Thank you,
enlightening.
Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Take
Be
care.
good.